Oh, we are live. Okay, there we go. I didn't see the timer. Hi, everyone. I'm Richard Wilmore, host of Arts for the Health of It.
And I'm Constanza. I'm your other host. And we are so excited and honored to have Hiram Larew with us today. He is with Poetry X Hunger, and they use the power of poetry to inspire action around the issue of global hunger. And he has poets from around the world that contribute to the work that they do, and he just has an amazing story and amazing impact of the work of poetry and hunger. And you might not normally put those two ideas together, right, Richard?
I know. And I will say that I'll say it as if I'm a really good producer and then I planned this, but it's National Poetry Month, and this just happened to be when we scheduled this. So it's perfect timing. So we're going to talk all about that. What else are we going to talk about? What they use poetry for, how you can get involved. We're going to hear some poetry. It's going to be a really fun time with Hiram. So, and they have a really, did you see their logo? I'm going to put it up
so
there.
Cool.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or wherever you watch this, make sure you're subscribing and liking. But also, if you're listening, go watch it too, because I'm about to show their logo because I think it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
And tells so much. Like, there's such a story there.
Ugh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right. I'm going to tell you. Oh, you were going to say something. Oh, yeah, you were going to. Sure. Yes, you do have something. Go.
Yeah, just one little announcement. I'm a keynote speaker at a conference next week about this topic of arts and health, and registration is still open. It's an online conference. So if you're interested, it's through Samuel Merritt University in California, and it's called the Hearts Conference, Health, Education, and the Arts. We'll post the link in the show notes in the comments if you're interested in registering. There's going to be amazing presentations. I'm really humbled to be a keynote speaker among all of the amazing presenters that day. I'm excited to attend, and so you guys should come too.
Is that the link you sent me yesterday?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Do you have it up? Can you put it in the comments now for people on Facebook and YouTube? We'll go in the comments now.
Yep.
And then we'll put them in the show notes as well, if you're not cool enough to watch us live on Facebook and YouTube.
There you go.
So there you go. They're now, let's make sure it's all you. Okay, good. Great. All right. So Dr. Larew helped to guide international food security programs for the U.S. government. And so he has a strong interest in hunger issues. He is also an active poet, and he founded Poetry X Hunger as a way to enlist many, many poets to write, speak back to hunger through their poetry. And I just want to get him out here because I want to start with a poem. I want to end with a poem. He should just read the book, and then we could go away. But let's start the show, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it? It's this one. Okay.
Welcome to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast where you will discover creative ways to improve your health and well-being. Someone may have told you that art isn't for you, but they were wrong. Anyone can create arts for the health of it. No talent or experience necessary.
I'm just a little songbird, try to fly my way homeward with the melody, and I make the beat. Don't know where it'll take me, cause when I'm in the dark of night, I sing my way back to the light. Come along with me, and your heart will see that a song changes everything. Oh, oh, oh.
I'm going to miss that in season 2.
I know.
Hi, Hiram.
Hello.
How are you?
Just fine. And I am so honored, Constanza and Rich, to be here on the Arts for the Health of It program. It's a real pleasure.
Well, we're glad to have you. Yeah, we're super excited to have you. We were talking before we went live that you said the poems that are in the book and that you receive are life-changing. And I thought that's super powerful. And I don't want to wait for my life to be changed. So I would like to have some life-changing poetry.
Sure.
So maybe start this off.
Absolutely. Let's start with a poem. It's a fairly short one by Ms. Abha Das Sarma from Bangalore, India. She's an engineer and management consultant by profession, and she writes to make her life happy and fulfilled. She wrote this poem and sent it to us at Poetry Ex Hunger, and we grabbed it and posted it on our website back in 2020. It's titled The Weight, and I apologize to her. I don't do this poem justice. You need to hear it in her voice, and you can. If you go to the Poetry Ex Hunger website, look at the bottom of the poem. There is an audio recording of her reading the poem, but I'll try to do my best. The Weight. As I write, someone somewhere waits. I imagine what it is to say hungry and stay that way. And if she could be my friend at lunch, a table well laid, when asked, "Are you a vegetarian?" I remark, "Hunger has no caste. It eats itself and lasts longer than you and I ever thought." The Weight by Ms. Abha Das Sarma. So that's just one indication of the kind of poems that we've been able to rouse poets to write, that allow us to use poetry as a tool to speak back to hunger.
Can we start by talking about the problem you're trying to solve first? Talk about hunger and talk about why poetry.
Sure. Hunger, we've been doing a pretty good job worldwide and in the US addressing hunger. And then because of conflict and of course COVID, we've slipped in very recent years. And so hunger is back on the rise. The incidence of hunger worldwide and in the US is back on the rise. And as I looked, my background is working. I worked with the US Department of Agriculture and with USAID on anti-hunger programs, or what we called food security or food insecurity programs. I also wrote poetry throughout all of my career. But when I retired, I had a little bit more time to try to bring those two worlds together. And when I looked to find what poems were being written that spoke back to hunger, I couldn't find too many. There were some, but not many. And knowing that poetry has been quite useful in speaking back and speaking up about other social causes like immigration, social inequity, poverty, racial injustice, I thought, well, we ought to bring poets into the cause. We ought to bring poetry to the toolkit that allows all of us to speak back to hunger using this amazing tool. And I know I'm biased, but I think poetry is a powerful way to speak back to hunger. And so that's how I kind of got started on this journey.
What was when you come to someone, you go, I think we're going to use poetry to speak about this and to raise awareness. What's the reaction to that?
Well, it's a wonderful question because it's probably the most interesting aspect of all this work that I've encountered. First off, I completely understand that poetry will never solve hunger. I understand that. But can it help? Oh, yes, I firmly believe it can, because I've seen it help on other social causes, working against inequities and promoting things like our welcoming borders for immigrants. Think of Emma Lazarus's poem on the Statue of Liberty that welcomes immigrants. So as I've engaged with folks about using poetry, to speak back to hunger, I often get a glazed over look and a pat on the back. That's a nice idea, Hiram. But here's the thing. If I can convince him to spend 3 to 5 minutes listening to a poet either live in person or even on a recording, performing her or his poems, I don't have to say anything more. Those poems and those poets convince through their words and their heartfelt reactions to hunger that they convince any doubters about the amazing power of poetry to reach out and grab hearts and minds and spirits and to activate folks to take action.
So there's this sense of activation. Something I noticed when I was reading through some of the poems on the website was how much sensory language the poets use, which is a part of poetry, is using your senses to describe different objects or feelings or life experiences, right? But just how it elicited this visceral reaction as I was reading them. And I think that's maybe what it sounds like is it helps to pave a path for empathy, especially with people who maybe have never been hungry and don't really understand what that is like. So why would I take action on a problem that I can't relate to or don't really care about? So what impact have you seen the poetry make in that vein of stimulating action?
Sure. Well, one kind of small indication is I have seen poets who are presenting their poems back before COVID. We were able to get some of the poets to perform live and in person in front of anti-hunger organizations at their annual meetings or conclaves. And these are the audience were members or people who have worked with hunger all their career. They know it front and back. They know all the statistics, the trend lines. They know all of the scientific tools that are being used, all the social uses of those tools. But when the poet stood up, well, first off, we introduced the poet and you could kind of get a sense in the room. I was like, what is this all about? But when the poet stood up and performed their poem in kind of a spoken, almost slammish sort of way, I saw people who had been looking down at their handhelds or making notes at the table look up. For the first time pretty much during the entire meeting. And after the poet completed the work, he was rushed by so many members of the audience. And I couldn't help but overhear, we get it now. We understand. And that poem really grabbed us. So that's one indication of impact. Another that's maybe even a little bit more specific is some of the poets during the Zoomosphere era of COVID were invited into a house of worship. I arranged for several poets to read their poems as basically part of a service. And as a result, that house of worship started a food drive effort that I don't think they would have probably started before that. It's not so much an indication of impact, but I'm just so excited that some of the area, I live in the greater DC area, and some of the area food banks here have reached out and wanted to bring on poets as poets in residence. First time ever this has been done, where a poet went into a food bank and wrote. Yes. So for 2 years running, the Capital Area Food Bank, which unfortunately has to be a huge food warehouse distribution center here in the greater DC area, has invited in 2 poets to come, feel, respond to, reflect on what they saw and learned about the food bank, and then write a piece. And both poets have prepared incredible video recordings of their work that they wrote and used to express their feelings. And recently, I was approached by another food bank in the county that I live in, and they wanted a poet in residence. And as I put them together with the poet, a wonderful poet here in this greater area, they came up with the idea of having her work with them for a full year.
Wow.
I have no idea
Amazing.
what's going to come of that, but we are just so excited by those kind of links and very unusual kind of precedent-setting links between those fighting hunger and poets who might help them in their messaging, in their outreach efforts to do their work. That's a long answer to your question, Constanza, but yeah.
Oh, it's a great answer. I feel like I need to sit with that for a minute.
Should we take our commercial break now so you can think
Maybe.
about it?
I think I need to think about it.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll take a break and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk to Hiram right after we take this little commercial break.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives. Whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at the power of music in our everyday lives through the lens of science and health, sports and entertainment, business, and education. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio. Unleash the power of music.
Make your day richer with The Richard Wilmore Show. Meet amazing musicians, talented actors, brilliant authors, hilarious comedians, and the most creative people in entertainment. Download the KP Media TV app to watch on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire.
Medical professionals are burning out at an alarming rate. Burnout can cause health workers to feel hopeless, trapped, helpless, worthless, depressed, sleepless, and tired. By joining the Hearts Need Art Gratitude Grams program, medical staff receive a personalized email and video from a musician, an artist, or writer once a week that includes a message of thanks, an encouraging song, uplifting poem, or a simple art activity. After watching their gratitude gram, participants report feeling more hopeful, empowered, energized, and appreciated. If you are or know a healthcare worker that would like to receive free gratitude grams, please visit heartsneedart.org.
All right, we're back. Arts for the Health of It. We're talking about poetry and hunger with Hiram Larew. Sanzi, again, week 2 of your mind being blown. Did you see the Instagram post that I put?
I did see the Instagram
Go to our
post
Instagram.
with the picture that you promised you weren't going to.
I didn't promise. I just said I wasn't. But then I thought, go to our Instagram if
It's too
you're
good.
unaware. But Stanzi makes the best faces when she's on camera and I'm pausing and she freezes. So there's that.
It's true. He has
Sorry.
a whole folder of embarrassing Zoom
Yeah, this
freeze
is-
frames of me.
So when I negotiate my new raise, I'm gonna be using
Blackmail.
those. Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
I want to make sure, Stanzi, now that you've had a couple of minutes to think about it, if you
No,
have any comments.
you go, Richard.
Okay. I want to talk about who is writing the poems. Are they, professional poets? Are they people who are using the program, and how are you finding them, or how are they finding you?
Great question. Could I just do a little bit of things I should have done right at the front?
Sure.
And
Sure.
certainly I want to thank you all for having me on during National Poetry Month. As you mentioned in your intro, this is a
Yay.
wonderful celebration. Also, you were kind enough to show the logo for Poetry X Hunger, and I simply wanted to acknowledge that's a beautiful painting by Diane Wilbon Parks. We are so grateful to her for painting it and to you for showing it. So how do we kind of find the poets and what sort of poets are writing poetry? Basically, we put out a call very widely through the networks that I have, and then those people that I know put out or amplify the signal, the call. And so we've gotten poems submitted literally from all over the world, but it hasn't hurt that the United Nations Food and Agriculture Program got behind us and provided some support for us to hold World Food Day poetry competition for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And through that, we've been able to generate a lot of kind of buzz about the notion of writing poems. And so, in terms of the demographics, Rich, we've got poets of all ages. We have a page on the website called Young exclamation point. That's one area that I want to build out more, but we already have some wonderful poems by young people. We have poets from all over the world. We don't have anyone yet from Greenland, but we're working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look to see what our demographics are of the show. Maybe we can
There you
do
go.
an
Maybe
ad
you can help us.
specifically
Yeah.
in Greenland for this.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got poems from pretty much all world regions, poets who live in all world regions. We're always looking for more. These are people who, yes, most of them, I think I can say, have been writing poems for a while. But I'm also certain that we've got folks who are very new at picking up the pen or the keyboard and writing a poem, and they've been brave enough, if you will, to share their work with us. So we're very proud of the fact that we've got a diversity of voices that are being raised to this cause. I'm very proud of that. And we're always looking for more. We want more poems in other languages. We have a couple on there, one in Spanish, I think, a couple in Spanish. We also have one in the Cheyenne language. I'd like to have a lot more in other languages, both in text form and in recording form, so that these poems can be used, literally by people around the world. But we're working on that. Again, another long answer to your question, Rich.
No, it's perfect.
I wonder what common, I can kind of guess, but I also don't want to assume what common themes, are there common themes that you see in the poetry? Have you ever read a poem that really surprised you in some way and taught you something?
Maybe I can answer that by making a point that's been made to me, or a question that's been raised often, and that is, can you write a poem about hunger if you've never been hungry?
Oh,
And
interesting.
it's a good question. Certainly, we have poems on the Poetry X Hunger website. I don't want to assume anything. You never should assume that a poem is autobiographical, but I think it's fairly safe to assume that some of the poems on the website have been written by people who have experienced hunger and luckily have maybe been able to escape it and then look back at it and reflect on it. But and those poets can write with an authenticity that simply can't be beaten, challenged. It's an amazing offering that they provide. But I also believe that those of us, I've never experienced hunger, those of us who haven't experienced hunger have a great deal to offer. For example, in our poems, we can ask, well, I've never been hungry. Why are you? What are the causes of hunger that I have something to do with and a responsibility for? So there are all kinds of ways that people, I think, from near and far and from all backgrounds, can contribute to the cause. You asked about themes, Constanza. We have not placed any bounds on aspects of hunger that people might want to write about. So we have poems on food waste. We have poems on, I think there are a poem or two on obesity, which, believe it or not, is related to the issue of hunger and malnutrition. We have poems written about hunger from the historical point of view, famine that was caused either by crop failure and or political conflict. We have poems about, of course, the social justice underpinnings of, or social injustice underpinnings of hunger. We have poems about nutrition and the like. So we haven't, as long as it's got something to do with hunger of the stomach, We are open. Our doors are open to all of those. I had a submission here recently that was a beautiful poem about hunger of the heart. It wasn't so much about hunger of the stomach. So I congratulated the poet for a beautiful poem, but I said I just don't think it's quite in alignment with the website.
It's a good distinction.
If there is someone listening or watching and they think that they do have something to say and to send to you, but they've never done poetry, can we talk about maybe some tips, some beginning stages of writing poetry and what you have maybe to offer people to start?
Sure. First off, we have guidance, what I call submission guidance on the website. If you go to the website and look under, I think it's kind of the either about us or I can't remember. It's all the way over to the right at the top of the menu. There are submission guidelines there, but more importantly, Rich, it's, we do have a few prompts on there as well that might help people kind of get started. Often, though, people don't need prompts. Unfortunately, hunger is everywhere, as near as next door or on our street corners, or if you're a student on a campus in the next room over, in the next dormitory room over, it's everywhere. So simply kind of taking quiet time, that it would be probably one requirement, is having some quiet time to reflect on issues of hunger. And on the flip side of that, maybe issues of privilege. Again, if you've never been hungry, maybe ask yourself, what's all that about? Why have I never been hungry when so many people around me maybe have been? And so just simply journaling, or in the old phrase, putting something in a diary, writing something kind of almost in a prose sort of way about your thoughts on hunger, and then using that as a basis for writing a poem about hunger, which would tend to be a little bit more crystallized, maybe adding some rhyme, rhythm, not necessarily all the time, but that's often those are often tools that people use. You can even consider writing a haiku, a very short poem, one of the most effective and historical poems that I did find when I went out to look for poems about hunger was a poem by the master haikuist who lived in the 1600s, Basho, and he wrote about hunger. Interestingly, he never used the word hunger in the haiku, but it's a powerful piece about experiencing hunger. So again, a fairly long-winded answer to your question, but the point is quiet time, reflective time, and thinking about either having experienced hunger or what it must be like to experience hunger would be a place to start.
When people are inevitably inspired by the poetry that you collect, when they are affected and want to take action, is there something specific you recommend that they do?
Sure. On the website, we have kind of a coaching spot that says basically, if you want to do something beyond writing poetry, here are some organizations that you might consider supporting, or even maybe more appropriately, Google your town, your village, your city with the word hunger attached to it, and undoubtedly you'll get, and unfortunately you'll get some organizations pop up that you might support then locally. So we do try to direct the support that people might want to offer in terms of financial donations to the organizations that are fighting hunger. Yeah.
You've created such a rich resource in your website. Like it's really wonderful. So I recommend anyone that's listening to go to poetryxhunger.com and check out all the stuff that they have.
One of the things that we've got there that is a little bit unusual, we've interviewed some movers and shakers, both in the poetry world and in the anti-hunger world, about, well, what do you think about using poetry to fight and speak back to hunger, and their remarks and their thoughts and insights. Really, really cool. We also have a section that looks back at hunger. Hunger has been with us ever since there have been people walking the earth. And some of the historical accounts maybe aren't poetry per se. About hunger, for example, in the colony of Jamestown, or the hunger experienced during Angatamor, the Great Hunger in Ireland in the 1840s. Some of those accounts are pretty darn moving. And so and almost poetic in their writing. And so we've posted those again so that people understand that hunger, yes, it is unfortunately all around us and current, but it also has a historical context. And people have been writing about it, if not poems, very moving accounts about it. So we post those as well, with the idea that some of those might prompt a poem. Some of those historical accounts might prompt a poem about hunger.
Very cool.
I'm going to take notes on your website and steal it. Make ours look like that. So there's that. What is the best way that people can connect with you and with Poetry X Hunger?
Sure. Well, the Poetry X Hunger website, as Constanza mentioned here a moment ago, is just www.poetryx, the letter X, hunger, all one phrase, poetryxhunger.com. And then if you'd like to be in touch with me, you can email me at poetryxhunger, again, one phrase, at gmail.com, or my personal email is hlarew, HLAREW, at gmail.com. And I'd love to hear from any of your listeners with any, of course, submissions, but also any kind of ideas. What's so cool about what you folks are doing is you're bringing all the arts to health. And one thing that I'm real interested in is seeing if there might be some areas where visual artists or dancers or musicians or storytellers might work with some poets to evoke, or what's the right word? Well, basically to speak back using the arts to hunger. Yeah.
That's great. So if that strikes a chord with you, like, go and reach out to Hiram.
And obviously your logo is a good example of how that would work really well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't think there's an answer. I don't think it's a yes or a no or wondering. It's a definite yes. Figuring it out. I can't thank you enough for jumping on with us and talking with us today.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, and I just really appreciate the platform for me to hold forth for a little while. As you can tell, it's something I'm fairly passionate about, and so any opportunity to discuss it, I try to grab, and your platform is especially relevant and potent. So I really appreciate the chance.
Well, we thank you for being here. I was going to say, someone's passionate when they're giving out their personal email so you can connect them. And it's not just do info@poetryxhunger.com and someone will get to you. Here's his phone number. We'll flash that.
Right.
Yes. Well, make sure you're liking and subscribing wherever you're watching or listening. Thank you, Hiram. Go check them out at poetryxhunger.com. And then look for our website redo in about a month when it looks exactly the same. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening and watching. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Arts for the Health of It, a podcast produced by Hearts Need Art, creative support for patients and caregivers, in partnership with the National Organization for Arts and Health. You can help others learn about the healing power of the arts by subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen or watch. The podcast is hosted by Richard Wilmore, co-hosted by Constanza Rader. Our theme song, Songbird, is written and performed by Natalie Lane. Visit heartsneedart.org to learn how you can support our mission to create joy with people facing life-altering health challenges. Join us next week to learn more ways you can create arts for the health of it. The views expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Hearts Need Art, their staff, board members, or other affiliates. All content is created for informational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice or to diagnose and treat any health condition. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.